Yeah, so this photo is a good example of, or it makes for a good example of my workflow. You can kind of see, so this is the raw file as it's displayed in darktable. Of course, it's not the entire file because um, it's a 60-bit file, of course, so it's not going to show you all the data that's there. You can see if I blow out the highlights, more data becomes apparent in the shadows, and vice versa. That if I decrease it, there's detail you can see. For example, in that lamp, which looks completely blown out here, if I reduce it, you can see it's actually still there. And so I'm not going to run through the actual entire workflow. But what you can see I did, if I can get back there. Just go back to the other version. So you can kind of see my history here as far as what I did. Again, this is the original. These are actually first three steps are some defaults that Darktable has up to like right here, I think. So this would pretty much look like what maybe your camera might do if it converted it to a JPEG. You know, it takes the most reasonable slice of the data, sharpens it a bit, maybe applies some level correction and noise reduction, which you won't get in the raw file, which is interesting to note. I didn't do any noise reduction on this because it looks pretty clean. But if it's a high ISO, typically you probably want to go and do some denoising. There's a lot of different denoising tools in Darktable. Some work better than others. But just to walk quickly through what I did here, you can kind of see the first thing I do is I sharpen a little bit. I use the base curves, which is kind of like levels, but it uses a curved algorithm. I'm adjusting the exposure a little bit to get, you know, kind of what I feel is the best balance. But what I wasn't happy with is that this is the dumb thing in a photo that I thought was funny because I was out there taking photos. I wanted that to be more prominent, to, you know, quote unquote pop a little bit more. And so I'm continuing to play with it. I sharpen it up a little bit more. Play with the curves a little bit more, which is hard to see. It's really subtle and probably doesn't really matter. A lot of this stuff is I was just playing with it. Highlight reconstruction, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, I adjust the exposure because I want this foreground, which is the most interesting part of the photo. It's, you know, quote unquote, the subject of the photo, to be more properly exposed. So I bump up the exposure, you know, probably almost 2 stops higher than it actually was. But the downside is I lose all the context, most of the context, which was the capital in the background here, you know, and also just the nice blue of the sky is completely blown out. It makes it look like it's weirdly semi-daylight when in fact it was taken at night. So that's where I use one of the benefits of the raw file is all that data is still there. You can apply a tool called a graduated density filter, which essentially recreates what a graduated density filter does in real life, which is it essentially reduces the exposure. It reduces the light getting to the sensor, rather. If I could find the freaking here we go. This is what the tool actually looks like. So you can kind of see I got the result that I wanted, which is the sign is, you know, that's not in focus, of course, but you can still read it. The weird portrait of Trump is right in the center, and I got the capital exposed in the nice blue of the sky. And the way that tool works is it works like a graduated filter in real life, except you can kind of place the gradient wherever you want, which is pretty handy for all kinds of situations. If you have an off-kilter gradient, you can place it like that. In this case, it was pretty much just the horizon I cared about. Really useful for cityscapes, landscapes, where you want the sky to be exposed like you might see it in real life, but avoiding all the horrible gimmickiness of tone mapping and HDR type stuff. But yeah, anyway, that's about it.